Today we're going to talk about why the guitar went from being an unpopular, unserious folk instrument to being a very popular instrument and one of the icons of rock and roll. If you're interested in how the guitar has decreased in popularity over the last couple decades, let me know in the comments and I can pursue that topic in a video. This video is patron supported. Please consider joining my Patreon at $1, $3, or $5 per month. It goes a long way to helping support videos like this and everything else I do on my channel. And there are many exclusive videos that feature original and cover music performances and things like that. Any ads you might see on this video do not help as much as Patreon, so please consider that. Thanks. To begin, let's take a look at how things got started. As I was growing up and becoming fascinated with guitar, the first player that really made me aware that you could play classical music on the guitar was Randy Rhoads. Up until that point in my life, I really didn't think about guitar outside of rock, blues, and country music. Keep in mind I wasn't even 10 years old, so excuse me for not knowing much about jazz at the time. Throughout the 80s, the guitar exploded even more as an instrument. The 80s was a great decade for guitar with many virtuoso players. Now, as we know, as grunge came and music continued to change, you had some diversions. You had people that used the guitar for a textural or emotional instrument and people that focused on the technical, virtuosic aspects of the instrument. But I'm a curious guy, and all that history got me thinking, how did all this happen? What led to the guitar not being the serious instrument and people just relegating it to certain types of music to it being seen as a very serious instrument? In my video about guitar and communism, and yes, there is a link between communist and guitar players, very weak one, but check the video to learn more. But talking to some commenters in that video, I remembered some information I had as I studied classical guitar, which leads us to probably the great grandfather of all guitar players, even if you've never heard of him, Andres Segovia. To start looking at Segovia, let's go back and look at the status of the guitar when he was born. In this article I found from the New York Times in 1964, and the title alludes to some of Segovia's innovations with guitar. He definitely did not invent the instrument. But the article says, though the instrument barely existed when he was a boy, it was on the borders, on the outskirts of music. Its current popularity does not surprise Segovia. People can take the guitar, he says, for whatever they want to do. The guitar really is an orchestra. Segovia was born in 1893. So for me, thinking what year might it have been when he was a boy, definitely sometime around the turn of the century. I'd probably say somewhere around 10 years after his birth, around 1903, 1905, somewhere in that range. Let's go a little deeper by looking at this article. The article begins saying, before the 20th century, the guitar was seen as a humble, if not inferior, instrument. And that statement right there could be a video or more than one video getting into why that was the opinion of the guitar. But when noting what changed it, there was one person mentioned, Andres Segovia. And we have a very cool quote from George Harrison of the Beatles, who paraphrased Segovia's influence by saying, Segovia is the daddy of us all. The article also mentions a review of one of Segovia's 1923 concerts in London by a critic that was a guitar skeptic. And the critic said this, we remain to hear the last possible note, for it was the most delightful surprise of the season. And again, showing how people, when you would think of guitar, thought of this horrible, low class, just inferior, not worth listening to instrument. The article goes on to mention that Segovia's path was very different, but parallel to what happened to the guitar in America. Because as many people that play guitar know, the American South and the tradition of blues and country and even bluegrass music is very rich in guitar. But do keep in mind that those are very much folk art forms. And folk art tends to be taken in a less serious way as studied in academic art. And to sum up this part about the guitar not being serious, here is a discussion I found on the gearpage.net, and it has a 2-sentence summary that works really well. The guitar is mainly a folk instrument. The barrier to entry is low in terms of cost and skill level. And yes, fellow guitar players, I am going to share one of the biggest secrets of guitar playing ever. It is not hard to get started playing guitar. It takes remarkably a low level of skill or practice to be able to strum some basic chords and sing some songs with your friends. So let's go deeper into what Segovia did to make people look at the guitar differently. When you look at his Wikipedia entry, it mainly focuses on his influence on other classical players, but there's more than that going on. To change people's minds about the guitar, Segovia spent his career focusing on several goals. In this 1983 article from Classical Guitar Magazine we have, at the beginning of his career, Andres Segovia had set himself 4 aims: to redeem the guitar from flamenco and other folkloric amusements, to persuade composers to create new works, to show the real beauty of the classical guitar, and to influence schools of music and conservatories to teach guitar at the same dignified level as the piano, violin, and cello. And notice that first goal, to redeem the guitar from folkloric amusements. To me, that first goal is the key to understanding what Segovia did to make everyday, commonplace people see the guitar differently. As mentioned earlier, what Segovia was doing with the guitar in the classical world was having an impact elsewhere and was running parallel to what was going on in the United States. If you look at big band jazz music of the 1930s and 40s, the guitar was more of a background rhythm instrument. Any guitar player studying jazz or how to comp with other musicians, you have definitely played the Freddie Green style of playing chords. Now, as the guitar gained amplification and the volume needed to be heard among all these other instruments, then it was easier for players to take a more solo and improvisational approach, like horn players, for example. Moving through the 40s to the 50s, it did take some time for the guitar to be able to be featured as a solo instrument. It's mainly due to the volume. If you look at the first rock and roll recording by Fats Domino, you see that a guitar player is listed. But I challenge you to listen to a recording of that and see if you can hear the guitar in that recording. Fast forward a few more years into the 1950s and Chuck Berry, and you have the guitar as a prominent feature, and the guitar continued to get the spotlight and be taken seriously. And now let's summarize and conclude. Around the year 1900, the guitar was mainly seen as a folk instrument. Segovia spent his life changing that perception with constant touring and working with composers to create a more deep and solid academic version of what you can do with the guitar. Segovia's actions affected more than just a classical world, influencing jazz players and then rock players for decades to come. So if you're watching this video, and I know people don't really watch after about 2 minutes, and if you think of the guitar as something besides just what country people play when they're sitting around a campfire singing songs to themselves, well then that shows the impact of Segovia right there. If you have more music questions you would like to see explored, please let me know in the comments. A way to support this channel is Patreon. Check the link in the description of this video. Patreon has several exclusive videos and posts each month focusing on my original music, cover songs, and music-related content. You can listen to my original music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and most places for online music. Follow me on the socials too. Kyle Walls on Instagram, Kyle Walls on Twitter and Snapchat, and Kyle Walls Musician on Facebook. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.